Hello friends, my name is Martinez and this is a reading vlog. It is the second reading vlog in the project where I am attempting to read 30 books in 31 days. Today it is the 8th and so far I have read 5 books, so I'm a little bit behind already. But I am currently reading Transcendent Kingdom by Gyasi and The Boy Who Lost Fairyland by Catherynne and Valente. Both of these are relatively short. I have been thinking since my last vlog, I'm actually putting the finishing touches on it so that it hopefully goes up today, about like vlogging in general and the fact that I didn't have like a lot of b-roll in that vlog, and everybody has their own like taste when it comes to the vlogs that they make and they watch about how much b-roll you enjoy, and I enjoy less. But also I was just thinking about like what it means to vlog this way while having a 9-to-5 job. Like all of my days, like today I have been in 2 meetings, prep meetings for board meetings, just prepping for the meeting, and then I'm about to enter into an actual board meeting. So there's your update for what I've been up to since I woke up this morning. That's my day, all day long, meetings. Is that good vlog content? I don't know, but here we are. If you're a new viewer, you already clicked out. You're like, what is this garbage? I promise I do reading updates. I'm just letting you know that I'm bad at b-roll, and one day I will be able to finish my next 2 books and get back on track. And hopefully that day is today at some point after I finish being able to pay my rent. Goodbye. Probably jinxed myself talking about how a 9-to-5 is not for vlogging, because guess who has to go into work right now for another emergency? I have like this huge sweater on and like socks and the whole deal because it is cold today in Florida. Let's see, the low was 48 and that was probably like 3 o'clock in the morning. It's currently 63 degrees outside, which isn't like that cold, but throughout the day it's been a little colder, and inside my apartment it's pretty chilly. So anyways, don't judge my like huge sweater. I am struggling right now. Welcome back to another update in vlogging while working a 9-to-5, in which I got home from like that little emergency at work last night at 9 o'clock in the night. So I literally just finished editing the first part of this vlog and then I went to bed, and that vlog went up this morning. So people are being very kind. You all are watching and encouraging me in the comments, which is so wonderful, and I do still feel like I can do this, but the like encouragement and the like you can do this is extra funny today on the 9th of December because I've only read those first 5 books, and so I've fallen 4 books behind. I am up to page 175 in Transcendent Kingdom, and I'm very much enjoying this. It's very thoughtful writing, it is very beautiful writing, and it's a story that is kind of like tugging at my heartstrings for a few things that I personally find relatable. The immigrant parents is one aspect of it, and then just growing up in a Christian household and the way that that is playing in our main character's life, even as she is pursuing science, and looking at those 2 things sort of in contrast, or the ways that they complement each other. This also has one of the most beautiful and well-written first pages that I've ever read, and this isn't something like that I go around like actively trying to notice like what's the best first pages that I've ever read, but this one was one that I read that first page and I was like, oh, beautiful, just like the way it introduced immediately, and you knew the type of story that you were going to get into. And the only other example I have of this is the first page in Space Opera by Catherynne and Valente, which that book I ended up giving it like 3 out of 5 stars. It was very middle of the road reading experience for me overall, but the first like page, the first few paragraphs of that were brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So now I have 2 examples of this like kind of at the ready in my brain. But yeah, I will hopefully finish this tonight. I've also read 40 pages of The Boy Who Lost Fairyland, so not very much in there, but I'm like, maybe I can finish this tonight too. I keep saying that, those have been like my last 3 updates, but I need to finish these next 2 books. And then after that, to play a little bit of catch up, I'll probably pick up something that I'm already in the middle of and just kind of finish it off, which has been part of my intention. I cut this out of the first vlog actually because I talk so much. So I I basically wrote down a bunch of books that it's not like serving as a TBR, but just sort of listing out a bunch of books that I would like to finish before the end of the year, or that were on previous TBRs that I never got around to, and then books that I have started and have not finished that I'm in the middle of. So things like A Beautifully Foolish Endeavor, Spinning Silver, First Sister, things that I've talked about and mentioned and have like read a chunk of and just never got back around to, and then series that I'm in the middle of forever that I would like to finish one more book in, like the Kate Daniels series, the Mercy Thompson series, the In Death series, like finishing one more entry into that. And then in my last vlog I talked about maybe, you know, reading one more book in each of the categories that were one of my goals, like books of the month, science fiction, and short story collections. So those are kind of the different areas that I'm picking from to assemble this TBR. But if you've ever seen any of my other reading vlogs, you know that my reading is basically like me thinking, oh, maybe I'll read ABC, and then ending up reading XYZ. and so I try not to announce my plans too much and just sort of update you as I go. But I've already brought these two up in the previous vlog, so I want to polish these off and then we'll see where we go from there. Hello, it's Friday and I didn't update yesterday. So we had like 2 or 3 cool days here in South Florida, like lows like we usually don't see them, not super extreme, but like lows in the 50s and things like that. And it's fine. It was fine, especially because I'm mostly indoors, except for yesterday because we had back-to-back days of it being colder outside. My apartment was an ice box and it would not warm up. We're not equipped for this. I'm not prepared for this. Apartments and homes in South Florida love to trap in cool air by design. So I was like miserable yesterday, and then by the time that I read enough to have another update, I also was just like raggedy. I looked raggedy, so I was like, you know what, I'm not gonna update. But this morning I do have some updates for you. First, I finished reading Transcendent Kingdom by Gyasi, and this was wonderful. I really enjoyed this. I have not read Homegoing by Gyasi, so I don't have like a comparison here, but this is very much literary leaning. So if you enjoy literary fiction, I feel like this would be something that you enjoy. It is very well written. It captures characters very well. It is plot light and introspective, and in a lot of ways feels like a diary entry, like this person is just kind of writing from their experience, a little like a memoir. And the experiences were ones that I personally found incredibly relatable because our main character is from an immigrant family, and also they were raised religious. So she's kind of contending with her beliefs and mental health, with her family history, with being a woman in a STEM field. So it's a lot of interesting layers to her life. And as I said, they are particularly well written and sharp observations from the author. So the ending was abrupt. I feel like there wasn't a real conclusion or sort of satisfaction that I typically like from my endings. And if things are left open, I like them to ask questions or make you think, or it has to feel like it's part of the story, and here it just felt abrupt. So I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars. Then I finished the 4th book in the Fairyland series, The Boy Who Lost Fairyland by Catherynne and Valente, and this is my new least favorite in the series. I always knew that this wasn't like my favorite. I thought the 3rd book was my least favorite, but I appreciated it so much more this reread. So in this one, I remember that I loved the beginning of the book, and then kind of the second half of it felt very different, and the story almost felt cleaved in two. That's like what I remember of my impression of reading this. And then reading it again, even the first half of the book, I was like, this is cute, but it's not doing enough to like carry the weight of the whole story, which I think suffers compared to the other one. So part of it is that we're not following September. So this is like a break in the main story, and the setup is witty because we've heard about changelings before in this world, and we're following one now, someone who has left Fairyland in and gone to the human world, and watching him process it. So a lot of those observations were funny and cute, and the Valente like style and wit that I enjoy. But this had problems, I think, with pacing, because the first and second half does really feel different. It doesn't warm you up to the main character as quickly as you warm up to September, and I'm not exactly sure why or what's missing. And also there were things here that were a little silly. And so the whole thing is whimsical, but I think that there's like an earnestness to like the other books, where here some of the creatures and some of the plots and setups are just kind of silly in a way that I didn't feel about other things. And that your mileage may vary. You may read the whole thing and be like, the entire thing is silly, but I found this sillier than the other entries. So, you know, it's still great. There are still really funny moments and good writing and quotes that I highlighted. So I think I would give this like a 3.5 out of 5 stars, where the other books are all like 4.5 to 5 out of 5 stars. And then after I finished those 2 books, I had a very Mari moment where I couldn't figure out what I wanted to pick up next, and I ended up starting 3 other books and they're all good, but like not any single one of them has made me want to like sit down and binge. So I'm just kind of like picking through these 3 books. The first is from Libro FM, and it's CM Martinez and the Moonlit Beginning of Everything. I'm about halfway done with this audiobook actually, and I'm having so many feelings in this one, specifically about the friendship at the heart of it and sort of the issues that they're going through. I haven't really been able to sink my teeth into kind of what's happening in the story or what sort of story this is. It is partially about grief, it is about this friendship, but it has all of these like other elements, like maybe magical elements that haven't been fully realized. So I'm still kind of scratching my head a little bit about the shape of this story, but there are elements of it that have been beautiful and touching so far. So that's one thing I'm reading. From the library on my overdrive, I am listening to Take a Hint, Dani Brown, and I am about, let's see, 34% of the way through that, and this one is cute as well. I'm having a fun time getting to know the characters, who are both really like sassy, and so their dialogue and their like quips and stuff are funny and entertaining, and we're getting still the setup of the whole thing, like we've just entered their fake relationship, so it's like not deep into their relationship, but it's very cute so far. And then on my Kindle I am reading The Sound of Stars by Alicia Dow, which is a science fiction story about the Earth after alien occupation, and then a human and I think an alien who basically go on a road trip together to save the world. It's kind of what I understood from the description, but I'm not very far in. I feel like I've read 26 pages. So very much in the beginning in the setup. So those are 3 things that I started, and I'm kind of picking around, which leaves me with no physical books. I know I'm listening to 2 audiobooks and reading an ebook, but I also pulled out some physical books to keep next to me, like I had these 2 next to me and kept telling you that I had to read them. So one is another book of the month book, and it's One Day in December. This is my December 2018 pick, and I've never read it, and every time I think about it, it's like not in December, which I know you can read this book not in December, but I'm always like, oh, I want to read it in December. So I finally remembered, I pulled it out, and it's gonna sit next to me. I have another book of the month book, and this was August 2020, and it's The Space Between Worlds, which is another science fiction story, and this one is by Micaiah Johnson. I don't know much about this, or I can't remember much about this. Obviously I read through the description and picked it out of a bunch when I read it, but I've heard pretty good things about this, and I'm trying to sneak in some science fiction reads here at the end, so that will remain next to me. And then of course the 5th and final book of the Fairyland series. Those are the 3 physical books that I want to get to, maybe next, we'll see, as I continue to just start things and see what fits. But it's Friday. I'd like to, it's, what day is today? The 11th, and I've read 7 books. So by the end of today, if I don't finish something else, I'll be 4 books behind. So where did my Saturday go? I actually was able to sleep in, like my body let me, which was great. And then afterwards I spent a couple of hours in bed just reading. It was really nice and much needed to recover from like the past 2 very busy work weeks. Then I got up and washed my hair and styled it, which takes a couple of hours because I have a lot of hair. And then I got ready and I look like this for a specific video that I'm going to record right after this. And then for the rest of the day, I will pick up around the apartment, tune into the nonfiction book club. I didn't read the book this time around. I have it. I will read it. So I'm going to use their conversation as a framework, and I always like to tune in anyways. And then after that, it is the House Salt weekly, I don't know, we catch up, we play Among Us. It's great. So we're doing that tonight as well. Between last night and this morning's reading, I did manage to finish off 2 more books. So I read Take a Hint, Dani Brown by Talia Hibbert. Talia Hibbert is probably one of my favorite romance authors currently, but I am finding that I enjoy her backlist more than like the Brown Sisters trilogy, which is what she's currently putting out. I think I gave Chloe Brown like 3 stars, 3 out of 5, maybe 3.5 stars. I don't quite remember. And I would give Dani Brown 3.5 to 4 out of 5 stars. So I liked it better than Chloe Brown, but I still had some things that it wasn't quite for me. I enjoyed the characters. I enjoyed their like dialogue and their like back and forth. I thought that they had chemistry. I understood why they liked each other. It's always a thing that happens like of the main conflict. So like, what is the thing that's keeping our couple apart in these romances? And in Take a Hint, Dani Brown, it's just Dani, honestly, and she has her reasons for not wanting to be in a relationship, and it has to do with like past relationships and like past trauma that she suffered because of relationships. So it's like understandable. However, it gets into tricky territory for me as a reader when this is like the motivating thing is just like a very internal thing and very one-sided, because our other characters like on board almost immediately. So it's just Dani, right? And it's her own inability to commit and also to even process her feelings. So I think when there is that, it's almost like a miscommunication with yourself is kind of what was the main thing in Dani Brown. And it has to be done well for me to enjoy that kind of thing. And I don't think it was done entirely well here in Dani Brown, specifically because it got to be so repetitive. So there were so many of these moments of like, he was nice to me, he couldn't possibly be nice to me, and like, you know, he loves me, that can't be possible, when it's very clear and obvious to the reader that it is possible. I'm not saying that this is unrealistic or anything like that, just that from a reading experience it becomes repetitive, and that as my personal taste, it's not one of my favorite like tools or tropes that are used when it's just like one character is oblivious and that is the motivating sort of factor or the primary conflict of the book. And that was definitely the case here. So everything else, like all of the other details, the way that the friends are used inside of the plot, and the different things that each of them have going on in their life, Zafir with his nonprofit and Dani sort of with her work and her PhD and her interest, all of those details were really great. And again, their chemistry was wonderful. It was just that the main conflict was this like weird Dani being oblivious and it getting repetitive over the course of it that made me not like love this the way that a lot of people love this. So yeah, 3.5, maybe 4 out of 5 stars. Then I finished off seeing Martinez and the Moonlit Beginning of Everything, and this is a science fiction YA, I would say, because it does involve like extraterrestrials, and I wasn't quite sure that's what the story was getting to. So I'm excited that I like picked this one and read it, and it does fulfill one of like the things that I wanted to read more of this year, which was science fiction. I think I'm gonna give it like 4 stars. I kept thinking while I was reading this about when we were discussing Addie LaRue, and during that live show we were talking about short chapters and whether that works or doesn't work for you. I was listening to this via audiobook, and because I'm listening to it, the shorter chapters became sort of even more annoying than they can be, because it was like 220 some really short chapters. So every couple of pages, you know, I'm listening to it and it would be like 167 and then like a minute of 168. So it kept interrupting it in a way that I'm not sure I would have experienced had I just been able to flip through and maybe not even pay as much attention to the chapter breaks. Some of the chapter breaks worked well in terms of like adding a little bit of like lyricism almost to the book and cutting it have very like significant moments, and some of them are just like what we call over on Snark Squad curb hangers, and they're not even cliffhangers, they're like just a curb because you flip the page and you're still in the same scene, and so like the dun 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 is nothing because it's literally just the same scene broken up by a chapter break and for why. Maybe if I had been reading it wouldn't have bothered me as much, but listening it definitely what kept being like an interruption. That said, I loved like the interpersonal things in here. I loved Sia's relationship with her father. I loved Sia's friendships. I loved Sia's romance in here. All of it was just so raw and real and well developed. It reminded me of A Million Junes by Emily Henry, because in that book it is also about grief, and then sort of in those larger themes about grief you also experience like a friendship growing, or like the growing pains of a friendship and what that can mean. The sun is just like, it's a vlog, it's fine, but it's just like, it's been overcast and rainy all freaking day. The moment that I open the window to record something, of course the sun is like, here I am in the middle of me recording this. What was I saying? It's not a friendship breakup. It is two friends sort of growing or getting into conflict and dealing with like the different ways or paths that their lives are taking. I think that this also did well talking about like immigration and racism in small towns and growing up in general. My only like hiccups with this were some plot things. Over the course of like the last 20%, I kept thinking to myself, am I mad at this because I'm not enjoying, like I personally do not like where the plot is going? Is the plot going somewhere, like is it bad, the progression of the plot, or is just not what I want? So I kept like turning this over in my head, but something happens at the very end that kind of colored everything else into a place where I enjoyed it more than I thought I was. Some of like the government stuff and the alien stuff was fine, but not my favorite. My favorite stuff was just the characters. So overall, I think I would give this like 4 out of 5 stars. Since I was done with that Libro FM audiobook, I picked up another one, and this one is called Long Time Coming: Reckoning with Race in America, and it's by Michael Eric Dyson. I'm listening, but I'm like pausing and like writing down quotes. So I think that if this ends as strongly as it started, I'll want to get a physical copy so I can mark things up as well. And it is just a very clear, concise, and compact reckoning of racial injustice and putting it into the context of the very specific cases that we've seen over the last year or so. I think I'll be able to finish that one off today, so that would make 5 books that I've finished in this reading vlog, and I'd like to get at least one more in between today and tomorrow for a total of 6. This morning I also did not record an update yesterday, but this morning I was thinking about the next book that I finished. That was Long Time Coming: Reckoning with Race in America by Michael Eric Dyson, and I ended up like, I think it's 3.5 to 4 stars, and my last few reads have been in this range during this vlog. So I started thinking about the way that I process books and how this vlogging my immediate reactions to books is different than sitting down and doing a review or a wrap-up where I've had time to sort of process. And I'm enjoying the exercise of thinking through my impressions of a book and trying to gather my thoughts like real time or more real time, and what it's like showing me about the way that I take in and receive and process and review books. And so I've had a few now that are, I'm like, I don't know, 3.5 to 4 stars. So I don't know if that's like right after a book, I finish a book, if I've mostly enjoyed it, but I haven't quite like pinned down the good versus the bad, if that's kind of the middle ground that I feel like it falls into. If it's something that after I read it, I feel like, yeah, there was like half good, half bad, that's a 3 star. But if I haven't quite pinned down what were the few things that like interrupted my reading experience, I'm always like 3.5 to 4 stars. But for this one, for Long Time Coming, I feel like if you're somebody who has been reading anti-racist literature either through the summer or before that, there will be things in here that feel familiar in terms of ideas, but there were a couple of new things as well that really just hit me. One was the structure of this. Dyson is addressing himself to a victim of police brutality in a letter format, but in that letter he's also exploring some other facet of racism, institutionalized racism, dating all the way back to slavery through Jim Crow, and this year with the Black Lives Matter protest. So I really enjoyed seeing some of the history and connections that he made. I liked the format. There were a couple of things that I didn't totally agree with, and so now I have to sort of separate out, like, I don't agree with this, and these are my feelings with, like, as a reading experience, and I don't know yet. But he talks about cancel culture, and there was a piece of it that I really thought was interesting in terms of how when we cancel somebody, we're canceling a singular person, and the structure and the institution remains the same. And so he's kind of arguing against cancel culture. And so he had some really interesting and valid points, but I think that he didn't tackle the idea of cancel culture being for a community to protect themselves and to say, don't go there, or don't support this, or don't do this, because that's not for, you know, that person or the institution. It's for the community to have boundaries and to be able to protect themselves. And he doesn't get into that at all, which is something that people rarely sort of get into when they're talking about cancel culture. So that was a little thing that I was like, Otherwise though, this was a worthwhile read or listen if you are continuing to pick up things about racism in the US or about anti-racism or anything under that umbrella. Then last night I decided, since I finished that audiobook, I'd pick up another Libro FM audiobook that I have, and that is Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. I listened to a bunch of this all at once. I got 60% of the way through the audiobook, and I stopped there last night because something happened that stressed me out. I was like, I cannot do this right now. I was too stressed. So I'd like to finish reading the rest of that today, and that would be then 6 total books across this vlog. Ideally, it would have been 7. I had 5 in the first one, and then probably 6 in this one if all goes well. I was thinking maybe I could finish off the last book in the Fairyland series and just call that one done between these 2 vlogs as well, but I think it's a little bit too big, and that's a little bit too much reading for me to finish Black Sun and this entire book. But that, I mean, that's a stretch goal, but I will fill you guys in at the end of the day, at the very end of the day after work and everything, so I can give you my final book and page count and tally it up with last week's as well. But overall, like, not a bad week either. I'm really happy with the way that this is going. I just finished listening to Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse, and this will be 4 or 4.5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed this. I loved all of the characters. I enjoyed following all of their points of view. There wasn't one that was like more interesting or more gripping to me. Every piece of the story felt valuable, and I wanted to know what was happening, and you felt the sense that they were all going to converge. So trying to figure out how all of those pieces would come together was great. It was gripping. I was stressed. I was invested. It just overall a really well done and well written story. My only thing where I'm like, is it half a star less or a full star? I think half a star. This will probably be 4.5 out of 5 stars, but the ending was a lot quicker than the beginning, which didn't bother me too much because I felt like we were getting this countdown. So it was just almost like this explosion or this like big unraveling at the end, which was fine. My bigger issue is that I felt like there was too big of a cliffhanger at the end. We did get some resolution, but it didn't really feel like complete arcs for a lot of our characters. They just got left hanging open. So because we had this countdown, it almost felt like, for what? If we don't necessarily know kind of where our characters are or what it meant for them to reach the end of this particular story. That said, it is a really great read, and one that I would recommend for fantasy lovers. You've seen lots of people gushing about it, and I will also now add my voice to gush about it as well. I'm glad that I managed to put this into my reading for 2020, and it will certainly be in like the top 10 things that I read, top 10 or 15, because I can feel like these characters are already with me, and it won't be a story that I easily forget. That is the end of this vlog. I read 6 books across these 7 days. Add that to the 5 books from the first vlog. I might do a little more reading before bed tonight, but I just kind of wanted to wrap this up and do some other hobbies. Like, I would like to finish up a recap for Snark Squad and do, you know, some other relaxing things, maybe watch a TV episode and give myself a little reading break so I don't burn out. And so that's it. If you have read or would like to read any of the books that I've mentioned, let's chat down in the comments. Again, thank you so much for your support. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you guys soon. And then over on my Kindle, I'm listening to this. Oh, that is dirty? No, Reflection. Because we're stuck inside and in this like endless cycle of working and nothing else. Anyway, it's a little depressing. Then I finished off Sia Martinez. What's your name, girl?